Hey, seventh graders, continuing on with our story, The Midwife's Apprentice, and we are on chapter 16. We are on page 104. We have two chapters left to finish our story, so let's get to it. Okay? As I'm reading and you're following along, the essential question that you should be asking is, how does our protagonist, Alice, how does her identity change and develop as we go through the chapter and the stories? Okay? Think of how she was at the beginning of the book, and as we wrap up the ending, that's a question that you should be able to answer for me. How has she changed from the first moment we met her at the beginning of the book? Chapter 16, The Baby. One warm evening came a stillness as if the whole world were holding its breath. Thunderstorm, thought Alice as she hurried to fasten the wooden shutters over the windows before the skies opened. Just then, a party of riders rode into the inn yard, a prosperous looking man wearing too much jewelry, a stout lady in some obvious discomfort, and their attendants, a man and a woman, sullen and none too bright looking. The man lifted the stout lady down, and they hurried into the inn, leaving the boy, Tam, to put the horses away and see them dry and fed for the night. Because they appeared important, Janet herself bustled over to see to their needs. "Supper, sir, cold beef and the best bread in the county. A jug of ale or some Rhenish wine." "We want no food," said the prosperous looking man. "How then can I serve you?" "In no way, madam, unless you be a priest, a magician, or a man of medicine. My wife is being devoured by a stomach worm." The woman moaned a little and then let out a great cry that nearly drowned out the thunder crashing about them. Janet crossed herself as the man swept platers and mugs off the big table and helped his wife lay down. Snatching a mug of ale from John Dark, Janet brought it to the wailing woman. She watched a moment and then laid her rosy hand on the woman's swollen belly. "In truth, sir, I think she is about to give you a child." The man looked at Jeanette with displeasure and dislike. "Get away from me, you fool! My wife has been barren since the day of our marriage and breeds nothing but discontent." Readers, barren means that she hasn't been able to have children up to this point. Continuing on. "She has in truth grown stout of late, but that be herring pie and almond pudding. Having a child? Pfft, impossible." Jeanette watched a few moments more. "Not only possible soon, but soon." The entire company looked then at the woman on the table who was struggling to sit up and was pushing so hard her red face nearly to bursting. "Impossible," said the man again, a little less confident this time. "What should be done?" The woman let out a bellow like a bull, and John Dark hurried himself outside, preferring the rain to this. "There's a midwife in the village, some walk down the road. I will point your man that way," said Jeanette. So for a time the inn resounded with the rumble of the thunder, the cries of the laboring mother, and the useless clucking of the woman's husband. Finally the manservant reappeared, as wet as water could make him. "I found the midwife's cottage where you told me," he said. "The midwife was not there, and no fire is lit, and it looks like some other child is making his way into the world tonight with the midwife to assist him. This one must make his own way." All the noise and confusion as the woman pulled herself up again and commenced bellowing. Her husband gave her his ruby ring to hold, and Jeanette gave her ale. The manservant gave her a black look and went outside to join John Dark in the rain. As the night deepened, the woman's cries grew louder and louder. Jeanette hustled and bustled, but she knew about brewing and baking, and not babies. And all her bustle could not help. Magistrate Reese went out and returned, unable to help but reluctant to leave. Alice stood watching from a place under the stairs, unwilling to be part of the scene, for the sounds and smells were all too familiar and spoke of her failure with Emma Blunt. She was kept from leaving altogether by her sympathy and her compassion, and by a certain curiosity that compelled her to know what was happening and to what end, and what might be done to finish or hasten or ease. As the wails of the companions grew near, as loud as those of the mother, Jeanette threw them all outside, the woman attendant who shrieked more than she attended, the wailing husband, and Magistrate Reese, who then stood at the shuttered window, frantically paging through his great work, looking for something to help, and every now and then calling out, "Jeanette, you must find the bulb of a white lily, or virgin's hair and ant eggs, or an eagle stone. Who has an eagle stone?" Finally, Jeanette covered the moaning woman with her cloak and whispered, I can do no more. This baby will not come. Slipped from the room. Lightning lit up the room, empty but for Alice under the stairs, and the woman in tears, in pain and labor, and nothing to help. Alice trembled. I should say to herself, but I cannot. I tried before and I failed. You must, said herself back to her. None so stupid, said Magistrate Reese. You are a nitwit, said Gromit Smith. Guts and common sense, said Will Russet. You gave up, said the midwife. Help me, cried the woman on the table. Keep still, all of you, and let me try, said Alice, coming out from behind the ladder. She got the woman to her feet and walked her around the room, stopping every now and then to pour some ale into her. She rubbed and oiled and pushed. She bade the woman sit and stand, kneel and lie down. She called on all those saints known to watch over mothers, St. Margaret and St. Giles and St. Felicius, and even St. Loy, who protects horses, and St. Anthony, who does the same for pigs, for she believed it would do no harm. She did every single thing that she had seen the midwife do, and even invented some of her own. As the thunderstorm passed and night prepared to yield to dawn, on a scarred wooden table that had seen much of pork pies and beer than babies, Alice delivered a baby boy with the black hair of his father and the red face of his mother. Alice had no basket of clean linens and ointments and herbs, so she tore a coarse thread from the hem of the woman's dress, tied the baby's cord, and cut it with a carving knife borrowed from the kitchen. Having no cumin or Sicily for sealing the cord, she spat on her hands and rubbed the cut end. Alice then opened the door. Here, sir, Alice said, handing the baby to his father. No stomach worm, but a lard and lusty boy. His mother shouted from inside, Stomach worm, blah! In truth, I thought a dragon was eating my innards. Give the lout to me. I will teach him to give such trouble and pain to his mother. The stupefied father took the baby to his mother, who commenced scolding and berating the little fellow, all the while smoothing his black hair and caressing his little hands until her scolding turned to cooing and his loud cries to gurgles. And mother and child fell asleep there on the inn table. Alice saw the man and his servants staring at her in awe. It be a miracle, they whispered. We haven't seen barren women give birth, stomach worm transformed to innocent babe, dragon defeated by a girl who appeared from nowhere. The man spoke to Alice. Good miss, be you an angel or a saint? Alice stared at him. An angel? I be no angel. Then it is saint you are, he cried, and all about fell to their knees in wonder. No, Alice repeated, no saint, no angel. Corpus bones, I but delivered a child. Your wife never had a stomach worm. But the man and the servants, still on their knees before her, prayed and thanked her for the cure of their mistress and the miracle of the baby. And while she was at it, the female servant asked for a warm cloak for winter and that the wart should fall off of her chin. Alice pushed past them and stepped out into the warm night. The moon was as round and as white as a new cheese. On a bench beneath the old oak sat John Dark and Magistrate Reese, sharing a mug of ale. Magistrate Reese winked at her and smiled. Alice smiled back, and then she laughed. A true laugh that came from deep within her gut, rushed out of her mouth, and rang through the clear night air. And that was the true miracle that night, the 1st of June, the month, as Magistrate Reese could have told her, named for Juno, the Roman goddess of the moon, of women, and of childbirth. So, just as Alice, when she was needed in her time of need, instead of standing behind the staircase and hiding her ability to help, had she not stepped forward and come out of the shadows of the staircase in the dark on that night in the tavern, that woman and that baby would have died. So she found her strength, she found her courage, and she saved 2 lives again for her willingness to help. As we continue on, chapter 17, The Midwife's Apprentice. June burst into bloom. Daisies, larkspur, meadow sweet and thyme, foxglove and thimbleberry, purple thistle flowers, and yellow whorls of blooming funnel. Alice sat in the meadow and thought. The rich merchant and his wife wished to take her back with them to Salisbury to care for their son and mayhap perform more miracles. He spoke temptingly of new shoes and a shrine. Magistrate Rees was leaving the inn to return to the lodgings in Oxford he shared with his widowed sister, and wished to employ Alice. My sister grows older and needs more care than I can give her, and I think mayhap Oxford would please you. Alice liked being invited, but Jenny scowled and moped, unwilling to lose a willing worker, but even sadder to see the last of the girl herself, and finally offered Alice a penny every now and then if she would agree to stay. So, readers, right now she has three offers for employment. Three people who are interested in the skills that she has developed and having her work for them. Pretty advanced. Continuing on. As she chewed on a grass, Alice smiled. From someone who had no place in the world, she had suddenly become someone with a surfeit of places. She closed her eyes and continued to chew. What to do? What do I want? She asked herself in the manner she had learned from Magistrate Rees, who thought it fitting for even an inn girl to want. In her mind, she saw Magistrate Rees's spotted face and kind eyes, heard Jeanette's merry voice, and smelled the rich perfumed robes of the merchants from Salisbury. She felt again the vigorous, squirming, wonderful aliveness of the merchant's son as he wiggled into her hands. She heard the joyful chatter of birds building their nests in the thatch of the church, saw the triumph on the face of the midwife as she coaxed a reluctant baby into life, remembering the silky feel of Tansy's newborn calves and the sticky softness of a baby called Alice Little. Of course, she whispered, eyes opening wide. Of course. She was not an inn girl or a nursery maid or a companion to an old woman. She was a midwife's apprentice with a newborn hope of being someday a midwife herself. She had still much to learn, and she knew a place where she could learn it, cold and difficult and unwelcoming as that place might be. That was her place in this world for right now, and though her belly would likely never be full, her heart was content. That night she dreamt she gave birth to a baby who gave birth to a baby, and so on until morning. Early in the day she saw the merchant and his family off to Salisbury, bid farewell to Magistrate Rees, and sent her respects to his sister, hugged Jeanette, and set off for the village, comb and soap, and a page from a great and holy book tucked into her bodice, and an orange cat at her heels. Not too long after this, the inn, which had been known simply as John Dark's place, came to be called the Cat and the Cheese, marked by a great hanging sign of an orange cat with a morsel of cheese in his paw. Within a few years, no one remembered why, but so it is called to this very day. As she swung along the village road, Alice, with good feelings tumbling about inside her, hummed and then tra-la-laid and then sang as loud and as clear as a swan. Some of the words were without meaning, others just sounded right, but some words came from deep inside her and told how she felt about life and hope and the road ahead. Come summer, come flowers, come sun, sang Alice. Purr, sang the cat. Alice knocked on the midwife's door, surprised at how the French roses had grown since she last was there. Jane, I'm back, she said to the frowning midwife. I will be a fine midwife's apprentice now. I know about babies and birthing and singing songs and cooking chickens and crying and laughing and reading. Is that all? Asked Jane. Are these not excellent things for a midwife's apprentice to know? They are indeed, but is that all? That is all, and I am here. But Jane would not have her. Alice stood before the cottage, eyes stinging and heart sore. She had not thought about this, had no thought no further than knocking on Jane's door and being welcomed. But there it was. Jane would not have her. And before morning turned to afternoon, and the morning glories turned their faces from the sun, Alice, in despair and confusion, turned from the village, fearful that each step would take her once again over that invisible line that separated the village from the rest of the world. But the cat would not. I know you do not wish to leave, cat, nor do I, but there is no place for me here. I tried to come back, but failed. She will not have me. her laid himself down, tucked his front paws under his white spot on his chest, and looked at her with his gooseberry eyes. What then shall I do? Alice sat down and listened to the humming of the bees and the purring of the cat. Suddenly she leapt to her feet. Corpus bones, you are right, cat. Jane told me what she needed. Alice turned back for the cottage, gathering comfrey leaves and raspberries and the tiny wild strawberries in her skirt as she went. She marched up to the cottage door and knocked firmly. Jane Sharp, it is I, Alice, your apprentice. I have come back, and if you do not let me in, I will try again and again. I can do what you tell me and take what you give me, and I know how to try and risk and fail and try again and not give up. I will not go away. The door opened. Alice went in, and the cat went in with her. And that, my friends, is the end of our story. So if you continue on the next slide in our Google slide for the day, I have a lot of kids who say, what? That's it? That's the ending? So I want you to do an explode the moment on what happens. What do you think happens to Jane after she and the cat walk back inside the Midwife's Apprentice's home? Okay, so working on sensory imagery to show me that. Explode this particular moment when she goes in. What does she see? What does she smell? What does she see? What does she experience? What does she say? What does Jane say to her? You tell me. You get to rewrite the ending. Good luck.